Okay, so I'm going to talk about how we enhance innovation through biologically inspired design. So this is a nice follow-up for Dr. Bielin and his work with creativity. I'm very interested in creativity and how to make ourselves creative, but first I'd like to tell you who I am, okay? So I'm an oceanographer. So here I am doing blue water diving to capture some of the organisms that I work with out. Anybody else have ever done blue water diving? It's a good practice if you ever become an astronaut. Okay? You're diving a mile away from the shore. You're a mile above the bottom. So you do not know where you are except when you breathe out and you see the bubbles go up. So it's scary.
How deep are you?
We went down to 70 feet. So, because we were trying to get below the thermocline, above the thermocline, there was so much phytoplankton that it was very dense. But as soon as you went underneath, everything was clear. I could see all these incredible organisms. And the organisms that live in the sea, because they are not subject to gravity like we are, they have very different shapes. So they're very bizarre. But yes, it was deep. So I work on copepods, which are the base of the food web, but they're one of the most abundant multicellular organisms on Earth. They live in Hawaii. I've worked there. They live in Antarctica. I've worked there. Okay, so similar places to outer space, except for Hawaii, maybe. Well, yeah, it gets hot. And I've also met the person who wrote Flow, who is another person who really promotes trying to make us much more creative than we can really be, or to our fullest potential. So the way I like to promote creativity is by putting two things that don't seem like they fit together, okay, which is similar to TRIZ, which is opposing opposites, right? Or mixing disciplines, like the class that I teach. I have very many mixed disciplines in my class. But if you take a look at this image, you say, whale, wind turbine, does that fit? Okay, and so he says yes. Or Jeanette, and then, let me see if I can run this movie. Where is it? It was just there, right? Yeah? Okay. Well, I don't see it anymore. I don't think so. I think it was. I don't know why it shouldn't be playing. It's weird. No. Yeah, it's all right. It's just. It's okay. I have so much stuff to give. I probably shouldn't show you the things that are opposite me. I'll try you later.
That's okay.
Okay. So here we have a opposition. You have a biological system on the right-hand side, and then a technological system on the left-hand side, or no, right-hand side. Okay. So what bio-inspired design, the way we try to come up with innovative or creative ideas is to put that together, but actually look into nature to get ideas. And so what happened in this case is a whale biologist saw a sculpture of a whale in one of the seaside booths. And he said, that whale, it has bumps on the leading edge of its fin. Any aerospace person would say, don't mess with the leading edge of your wing. And so he says, that must be wrong. He went back and he looked it up and he said, oh my goodness, it has bumps on the leading edge. What is it for? Anybody know?
Anti-icing.
Anti-icing, good. Anything else? I'll talk about anti-icing material that somebody over here at Harvard just was inspired by the pitcher plant. So the pitcher plant has a...
the boundary layer.
Exactly. So people who like an aerospace engineer will know that it's something to mess around with the boundary layer. That's what you were going to say?
Well, I don't know an aerospace term. I was going to say, I guess we're sure whatever, like,
Yes.
the airflow in front, so that way you push more water up and slower.
Exactly. Exactly. Well, it turns out by having those bumps on it, it enables it to maneuver a lot more easily. And so he was giving this talk about how these bumps help modify the leading edge of the turbulent boundary layer. And a guy who builds windmills said, Dr. Fish, oh, by the way, the person who studies it, his name is Dr. Fish, he asked, Dr. Fish, do you think we could put that on a wind turbine? And it turns out when you do put it on the front edge of a wind turbine, it makes it much more efficient, much quieter, and able to capture wind energy at a much lower wind speed. So we can learn a lot from nature that can help us, especially on sustainable things, issues like wind or gathering free energy. So first I'd like to tell you, why does biologically inspired design work? Okay, so we've got 3.8 billion years of history of life on Earth, and of that, 99.99% of them have been recalled. So it means that what you see are pretty good. So we can learn a lot from them. Like if you see the basilisk lizard run across the top of the water, it's learned something on how to walk on water. And that would be something that we would like to do. Or go out to outer space, although that's been the very big challenge that Charlie has always given me, is that how do you apply biologically inspired design to an environment that's so different from the Earth? Okay? So what Dr. Bielan was showing us is that how do you expand your design space? So one way to expand your design space is look to nature, because a lot of us don't really understand exactly how nature works, but if we look at it, we could understand it and apply it in different ways, because often natural systems solve problems in ways that are different than we solve them. And so already you can see that, okay, if they solved it differently, it should give us a new idea. So it's a rich source of design, and if we can understand these biologically inspired solutions, which tend to be efficient, practical, and sustainable, and harness them for engineering expertise, then we'll be able to come up with some pretty innovative designs. So how many know that this is the most well-known bio-inspired design, Velcro? How was that figured out? Do you remember? These are hints. Yeah. Becky, is that what your name?
Yeah. Those little burr things that stick on doors, for example.
Yeah. That's the little burrs that have little hooks. They stick onto little loops in your fabric or little stuff on the dog. And because at the point when Sir George Mistral was trying to pull all these burrs off, he also was having trouble trying to manipulate some zippers or buttons. And he said, these things fasten so well. Why don't we figure something out that could help me so I don't have to fasten everything or through buttons or zippers? And so here the Velcro is used on the astronaut's glove, and you can imagine an astronaut's fingers are not very agile. So you really need something that you don't have to do a button or a zipper, okay? And now it helps people who have arthritic hands to be able to button their shirt or Velcro their shirt or Velcro their shoes. And in fact, probably lots of kids don't even know how to tie their shoes anymore because they have Velcro fasteners, okay? Anyway, so here's the whale jumping up. It enables it to have more efficient swimming, makes wind energy more efficient, and then just to give you the voice of Dr. Fish, my buddy, actually he's a really good friend of mine.
Can whales solve the energy crisis? I'm Bob Hirschon.
Oops, sorry. I'm just trying to figure out why the volume is so low. Oh, you can hear it? Okay.
Can whales solve the energy crisis? I'm Bob Hirschon, and this is Science Update. At up to 20 feet in length, the flippers of the humpback whale are the largest of any marine mammal, yet the whales use their flippers to maneuver easily around their prey. This is because the large bumps on the leading edge of the humpback's flippers create extra lift and allow water to flow over them more efficiently. Now engineers have designed new windmill blades that mimic the unique shape of the flippers. According to marine biologist Frank Fish of Westchester University, preliminary tests have been promising.
What these bumps tend to do is allow us to get more power out of the windmill blade and to allow the windmill blade to work at lower wind speeds.
Fish says the whale-inspired windmill design could generate large amounts of electricity in areas of low wind. I'm Bob Hirschon for AAAS, the Science Society.
So as I said, it can address many of the problems we have in our dealing with sustainability issues. Okay, so what I'm going to do is give a couple other examples, just because it's just, to me, fascinating. So would you ever have used a box fish as an inspiration for a car? What other fish would you have rather used? A shark or a really fast swimming fish? Not this box fish. But it turns out when they do a flow visualization around the fish, it's actually very stable. It produces two vortices below its wings, pectoral fins, that keeps it stable from flipping over. But that's not the one that really got me. The one that they learned from the fish was that when they looked at the skeletal structure of the fish, it was only reinforced where it was stressed. So rather than reinforce the entire car, the Mercedes-Benz said, let's just reinforce it where it's stressed. And by that, it was able to make lightweight but still strong. So there's your TRIZ, lightweight but strong. And they were able to reduce the weight by 30% and get to 80 miles per gallon. That, I think, is amazing. How about this one? This is the fast train in Japan. The engineer, the CEO said, every time that this fast train goes in or comes out of a tunnel, it causes a big, loud bang. And so, can you solve the problem? So the engineers went home, and one of them happened to be a bird watcher. And so he goes in home, and he says, wow, I've seen this kingfisher dive from air into water smoothly without a splash, which is your visualization of the sound wave. Okay, let's use that as the nose cone of our Shinkansen train. And it turns out that after they actually did some computational fluid dynamics analysis of it, it was the correct shape. But not only that, it actually tells us that, okay, the natural design works well, and that it meets our engineering requirements. But this is another thing that happened, is that it became, the bird became a very valuable and precious resource, because it had the knowledge of how to go through two different media without a splash. And so it improves our appreciation for the natural world, which is another sustainability issue. How do you conserve biodiversity? So I need to know how long I have to teach. Do I? An hour and 15 minutes. So I have until 5?
Yes.
Okay, because I don't know. Okay, this is another one. So anybody who ever took biology and played with slime molds, they're just okay. So they're just these little guys that are multinucleate. But these slime molds actually figured out how to set up a very good traffic network. So slime molds grow from a nutrient source, and they try to find another nutrient source. Their optimizing the fastest way to transport nutrients from one place to another, okay? And so what these scientists did was they placed the slime mold, which is this yellow thing here, and then nutrient sources at different points, and asked the slime mold, okay, find the fastest way to get from here to this spot, from here to this spot, from here to this spot. So they let them grow, and it turns out, so you can see it made a nice network, but does anybody recognize what this outline is? Yep, it's Tokyo and all the local townships. Turns out that when you compare the slime mold and the way it connected all the townships to the way the railroad system, it's very similar. And yet, this did it in 18 days. How long did it take the rail system, the people, to design that? So you could use this, and actually I've tried to encourage some of my students to use it to redesign a new traffic pattern for Atlanta. So these are just amazing things. So look at this eye. Wouldn't you always like to see behind you? So you're not always seeing in front of you. So why not study how the fly is able to use this multifaceted hemispherical lens and take a look at the, create something where you can see behind you? Well, it turns out that people in 2006 are hypothesizing that they could use this as a design for a new X-ray telescope to see out into outer space. And the advantage that the compound eye has for the fly is that because the way an object moves and alerts one of the facets of the eye and then the next one and the next one, it's very sensitive to motion. So if you make a compound microscope or telescope, when you have that very slight movement in the sky, it is registered very well. And so they're actually using the same technique as what the fly uses, to detect motion. Okay, and we mentioned during the previous talk about how feces get stuck in toilets, and if you can put a lotus coating on it. So does anybody know what the lotus super hydrophobic coating is? Okay, so you have this lotus leaf. It has a self-cleaning capability. If you go into the swamp, it's dirty, but the lotus always looks very white and clean. How do you think it does that? And if we look at their microstructure, it has all these little bumps on it. And then if you look at even closer, you see these bumps have, particular structure, particular spacing. So it turns out it has waxy surfaces on the top, so that it's hydrophobic, and hydrophilic in the channels. And when the water falls on this surface, the dirt on the would prefer to go with the water than to stick on the surface. So you can see that when it rains, the plant self-cleans itself. Okay, so now, say you knew this, okay? What would you do? How would you use this in a human design? Self-cleaning windows? Self-cleaning solar panels?
Paint for my car.
Paint for your car. Why? You don't like washing your car? Yeah.
You could use it in bottles to make the ketchup to fall out easy in the bottle.
Wow, that's a good one. Okay, but the same thing about the toilet, right? Use it to something so that it doesn't stick. So if we're applying it to our challenge here, so it turns out that people have used it to design a paint so that you can paint your house and then you can just use water to clean off the surface. But that's not the reason why I told you this. It turns out that, okay, so this idea came from nature. They figured out how to do this super hydrophobic surface. It has now led to over 200 patents. Now, wouldn't you like to be that inventor? To have 200 patents under your name? Okay, so that's what I'd like us to do. So if we look at the number of patents that are biologically inspired, we see that they're increasing exponentially with time. So we ought to catch the wave. And at the time, at Georgia Tech, where I am a professor of biology, and I also teach an undergraduate course in biologically inspired design. There are 40 students in my class. Half of them are biologists, half of them are engineers. The engineers are material scientists, mechanical, aerospace, and industrial systems. So in 2005, we formed the Center for Biologically Inspired Design. We had our first international symposium the year after. If you go to this website, you can find out more about us. All of these organisms here, the butterfly, the copepod, the bee, the crab, the diatom, and the prosthetic, all were bio-inspired. So I direct this center, and I have some really great colleagues. Here they are. So they're in mechanical engineering, cognitive science, biomedical engineering, biology, mechanical, and industrial and systems engineering. So this is the team that I work with, which is why I asked you to sit in your teams, okay? And so by putting these types of people together, what do we come up with? More creative ideas and more innovative designs, okay? I have a book that I wrote the first chapter of, so it's called, can you read it? How Science Uses Nature's Secrets to Design Cutting-Edge Technology. So I wrote the first chapter on inspiration from the sea. Okay? So I wanted to tell you a little bit about how my center works, just so that after teaching this course with Charlie for several years, he said, we need to set up a forum of experts, people that you can call on, because a lot of times we don't have all the knowledge in ourselves in one person. So if you knew that you could call me to say, can you contact that person in your team that does biomimetic materials or biomimetic locomotory system? You could do that. You could then email me. I could find that person, get you connected. It's very important to make those connections. Okay, good. So these are our team. They work synergistically between many different fields, and we know that often at the interface of two different disciplines, you often have much more creative thoughts. And why is that? Because you're looking at a problem through a different set of eyes. Okay. So some of the examples are this desert runner, which was inspired by the cockroach. Okay. So you can see this desert runner here. Does it look like a roach? Not exactly. And the reason why, that you don't have to do biomimicry, which is copying. We want to use bio-inspiration. You extract the main principles. And it turns out that the principle by which cockroaches are able to be stable is because they use an inverted pendulum walk and a 3-point landing all the time. And so those are the principles that are transferred into this desert runner. And so this runner goes, it's been designed. You can always see Rex running around on your, just look it up on your computer.
R-H-E-X?
Yeah, R-H-E-X. Just look it up. It's really fun to watch it run around on things. But this is the part that I think is interesting. Let me see if I can get here. It turns out that when you put Rex on sand, see what it does? It gets stuck. So then Dan, Dr. Goldman in the School of Physics at Georgia Tech said, I'm going to go study other desert sand runners. So he studies this lizard that goes zooming across. And it turns out that all he had to do was change the gait of this Rex, which means just change the speed at which these legs are deployed, and it will run across the sand. and that's what the lizard does. So the lizard, when it goes from solid earth to sand, all it does is change its gait. Now, that's already amazing, but what I think is cool is that he did not have to change the structure of the robot. All he had to do is change the control parameters. And just say, when you hit the soft one, and tweak, get that feedback and slow down the gait, or change the gait. And I think that's what the cool part is.
And this was actually a problem that happened with one of the Mars rovers, right? It got stuck in very, very fine, soft sand. And that's how it got stuck. But if it had this kind of an adaptable mechanism, a sensing mechanism that it knew what was coming up, it could change its gait automatically. Right?
Yeah, and get unstuck. And that was learned from a lizard, desert lizard, that ran from a rock and then kept on running through the soft sand. No problem, just the same speed. Okay, here's another one invented by David Hu, he is in the mechanical engineering department. Look at this snake crawling up the tree. I mean, I love it because it's, especially for teaching, for anyone, this is fascinating to see a snake crawl up a tree, right? And then somebody says, oh, I think I can figure out how to make a robot do that. And it has to do with anisotropic scales on the bottom that grip in one way as it climbs up. And so they make these snake-like robots. And because it's so fascinating, the people I work with at Georgia Tech, there's a Center for Education Integrating Science, Math, and Computing, and we are working with them with 8th grade classes in robotics. And you can imagine, if you were when you were an 8th grader, wouldn't you have loved doing something like this? So it's working out that these people are encouraging the students at that age to really dig into their science, learn the biology, learn the math, learn the computing, and to make a really cool robot. So it's a good way to deal with that kind of education, integrating education. So I was going to give this, so I tried to promote bio-inspired design practice outside of Georgia Tech, so I do it here with NASA. And so here, this is what we did 4 years ago. Okay, so this class started about 4 years ago with this same team of, so here's Dr. DeVeck, and here's our loved Charlie, and
that was Jack's head.
Yeah. Is this you, Jack?
Yes, that's Jack.
And there I am.
And there's Sven right behind you.
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay, and so what was that there? Where's Sydney? I wanted him to tell the story because he wrote the paper on it, right?
They've heard the story. I spoke
You've heard the
about
story
it for
already?
an hour on Sunday.
Okay.
So they know it inside out.
I know. I wish I heard it because I only read it. But you can see that by looking at seed pods, here they've were able to redesign a way to cushion the fall or to pack. Actually, I thought it was to pack things. But besides that, it supported graduate students, generated some more research funding, and here we are again, trying to do it again so that you have the chance to be the inventor. Okay? We see that there are a lot of companies that are involved that use bio-inspired design. I made this slide like 5 years ago, so I'm sure there's a lot more to this list than before. And then I wanted to show you a little bit of what goes on about bio-inspired designers. Just here, around in Boston, you can walk around and see the Wyss Institute of Bio-Inspired Engineering. And so they do things like reinvent helicopters, let's see, helping people walk or understanding how things walk, understanding how things self-organize. Okay, this guy's really cool. Look at this. This is the one I'm going to go visit tomorrow. Rob Wood, he invented the RoboFly, okay? And let's see. So here's the RoboFly person, Rob Wood. So he's just around the corner on Oxford Street. So if you want, you can come and visit him with me. It's at 2 o'clock tomorrow. Okay? And then there's the Iron Snail at MIT. This one's really cool. If she comes up. See? Nanomechanics of structural biological materials. So I know there's a lot of material scientists here. There's just, you can look at the hierarchical structure of many of biological systems, and so that contrast of strong and lightweight can be solved many times because nature has to be light, has to economize on materials. And yet it still has to remain strong. Okay. I could go through more, but you can look at it. There's ice-free surfaces, a robo-fish, a football helmet inspired by that shrimp that you just saw, actually, by that shrimp. This shrimp here, you know about the stomatopod, if you keep it, they're really beautiful shrimp, they're about this big. If you keep it in a tank, it can break the tank glass. It's that strong. And it actually moves its claw so quickly that there's a cavitation bubble that occurs. So it's a really, it has some capabilities for stored energy in an unusual way.
And Jeanette, that was the inspiration for the football helmet? Is that what you're saying?
This football helmet here. Yeah. So, how a shrimp's 200, see, it's a 200-pound punch. It's not that big. And so it inspired, the way it's structured inspired the design of a new football helmet. Okay. So are you convinced that perhaps we can learn from biology on new ways to design things and solve problems in a different way? At least solve it in a different way, and perhaps it would work it better. So this is the iron-plated armor. Oh, I got to show the material scientists. This is so cool. Look at, okay, so this snail lives in the deep sea. It doesn't want to get eaten by all the crabs, okay? So it's got a really nicely designed shell. It has a curved surface. So of course it distributes the impact force around. It's got layers, and in between the layers are proteins. So even if a crack breaks through the first layer, the force of that crack propagates then, or dissipates along the protein layer. What else does it do? There's iron in it to increase the strength and calcification. Anyway, a lot of ways that this little snail tries to just protect itself from being eaten by a crab. Okay, and then to go into the next section of my lesson is, here is the president and the National Academy of Engineering and President Emeritus of MIT saying, we are going to see in surprisingly short order that biological inspiration and biological processes will become central to engineering real systems. It's going to lead to a new era in engineering. So I want us to jump on that wave. Okay. So how do we do this? This is what we want to try to do in this class. So I want to teach you, I think you've learned in the first classes about problem decomposition and breaking things down into the subcomponents so that you see, so that the complexity doesn't overwhelm you. You can see, okay, it's all little subcomponents. So I would like to tell you a little bit more about all these other tactics or strategies, and so that we can all practice to be a bio-inspired designer. Most of it is written in this chapter in this book, Biomimetics, Nature-Based Innovation. It's a chapter that we wrote with my learning scientists and cognitive scientists. So that should also be posted or will be posted. Okay, and as we were emphasizing, we don't want to use biology. Okay, here you're using the horse to transport you. We want to learn from biology. We don't want to copy directly. If you look up Asimov, you see that it's totally like really super over-controlled, but it works. You want to actually take the key principles, as you saw with the Rex, and it's a simple system, and use that so that you don't have so much failure or so many possibilities for failure. Okay. So learning from and applying principles means you need more than subject knowledge. We need to be able to identify common solutions and challenges and transfer those principles. And so that's what I'd like to talk about. How do we transfer those principles? Okay, so one of the things that stimulates creativity is feeling uncomfortable. I don't suppose you feel uncomfortable with me speaking here about natural systems, right? Because somehow nature makes us feel comfortable. But anyway, ambiguity is good. This is written in a paper on barriers to creativity in engineering education. And so it's good to be uncomfortable. So maybe it's the cold atmosphere keeps our brain going. How's that? Okay? So it's just out of reach, but it stimulates us to go further. And so if you look at this paper, I also will post this paper.
Can I ask you a question
Yes.
about this, feeling uncomfortable? So is that because we've kind of mastered nature in a way? We are the masters, and we're maybe abusing nature, right? We're now well, they just caught a bear, I think, yesterday in Newton. It was a big story on the news. But by and large, you know what I'm saying? Like, if we went back 100 years or 150 years, people were really afraid of nature, right? If you were like a pioneer out west, you were worried about coyotes and bears, and the humans were kind of on the defensive in a sense, right?
Oh, I see.
We were
so
trying
now
to
we have guns and houses.
So now biology is like this cute thing that we've mastered. Is that what you're saying? And because 150 years ago we were surrounded and surviving within nature,
Yeah.
and therefore it was more threatening to us. Is that?
Well, I part of it is that, but part of it is saying, okay, is it cute? Okay, because that puts biology sort of in this kind of category of lesser importance. And I want us to realize that actually if we took away that covering, we would see that, wow, we can learn a lot more. Okay, and that's where I want to take it. Yeah. Okay, so I have a quiz. In your opinion, what is biologically inspired design? So you have to pick one of these. A way to understand nature's genius, to enhance creativity and innovation, a special case of design by analogy, a more sustainable method for engineering systems, something that has been going for hundreds of years, mostly just hype. Okay, so A, how many?
Just one, is it one or a
I know. Okay, there could be multiple answers. I'm just going to write down something. Okay, let's do one answer first. Okay. Yeah, right. So special case B. Anybody for B? Anybody for C? All right, good. That's what we're going to try for. Anybody for D? Yes. Okay, so that's the whole 99.99% have already been recalled. Mostly just hype. Come on. Give me some punch here. Okay. Well, it turns out, good. Yes. Oh.
Have you worked with thermophile before? How would you transfer the principles of thermophile into, the realm of humanity?
Okay. To be relevant to humanity? Yeah. The way I would think about it, okay, thermophile, right? First you break it down. We have to do a functional decomposition of that organism. It's something that has adapted to high temperature, right? But if we go back in evolutionary time, there was a point when that bacterium didn't have to deal with it. But it evolved slowly so that it could adapt to the high temperature. That could help us if climate increases. Maybe there's something that we can learn from how that bacterium adapted to high temperature that we can use it to adapt to our global, greenhouse effect. But you see, you have to think, first got to break it down and back up and use evolution and see how adaptation works. Do you think you could do it?
So it's not necessarily like the actual mechanism, it's like the evolutionary path.
Yes. It could be the mechanism if it works at your scale, okay? So at the scale that the thermophile works at, it may not work exactly. I don't know what you want to use it for. For us, yeah. So if you define the challenge, like a lot of times, like when Sven said that limitations don't limit your creativity, it just helps you focus it. We need to accurately define our problem, or else we'll get, too diffuse. Yeah, got it. Good. Okay. Okay, well, all of these work, but I'm going to talk about this one, the one that nobody raised. All right, that's good. So he knew. Okay. Well, it turns out, like, earlier when I asked that question, there were many more hands. But I think over the years, there's been so much stuff in the news about this made that, and all these stuff that people are now beginning to see that it's actually really making us solving some different problems in different ways. So, what's in an analogy? What is an analogy? Okay, it's like light as a feather. A metaphor takes feather, which is a biological system, and it compares something in a material science, lightness. Okay, so it carries you across disciplines. And biologically inspired design is a natural for this because it's going from biology to engineering. So you have to say, so you'll be making analogies between two domains. So it's cross-domain, and you already know this. Translation of systems often is a stimulus for innovation. So if you were going to think about the function of sticking, maybe you would think about the gecko. I mean, I probably would think about something else first, like a octopus that sticks with a sucker or something. What would you think of if you wanted to make an analogy between the material property of adhesion to an organism? Gecko's not bad.
What about a frog?
Or a frog, good. Or slime on a snail. So you've seen snails crawl on the underside of... Okay, so how do you think a gecko sticks? Does it use slime? Does it use suction? Does it use what mechanism does it use? Ah, good. So you already know this. How did you know this? Even you knew this. Good. So there's hairs on it, and it creates increases the surface area so that van der Waals forces can work. But, okay, so they said, wow, this is really different than slime. They don't have to put slime there on it. It's dry adhesion. You don't have to exert suction, so that's another force that you would have. It's just using surface area to increase. So here you see all the hairs on it and the spatulae, which are asymmetric, so that it sticks in a particular orientation. And by doing that, what do we see here? Well, okay, first I'll go through the movie. You'll see the sticky bot, I guess I could have made it bigger, crawling. You see that it's a mirrored surface. So this robot is able to climb a surface that is extremely smooth. And that's not something we could do before. And so here we see by a collaboration between the biologists, Keller Autumn with some polymer engineers who created the polymer that has the little pillars that are able to deform and have enough surface area to stick and crawl up a super smooth surface. And over here, the tail is really important. I was just going to say, yes, the tail is important if it falls off. Who said that? Oh, yeah. Yeah, it actually helps stabilize it if it ever falls. But if you watch a gecko fall, it can still hold itself up by one pinky.
So, to me, I guess in this case, it seems like you can. This explains the mechanisms of a gecko using this, but it's not like we can use this because our mass is too heavy. So, like the only way we will to use this is if like we have massive amounts of surface area, which
Yes.
is like kind of impractical.
Yes.
So then, I guess is there like an actual practical application of knowing?
Yes. Yes. So the practical, yes. And actually, this is perfect because in our class, we give them that assignment of calculating how much surface area would you need to lift the person up, just so that we could calculate, and you say, oh man, you really have to have a lot of surface area.
Yeah, but Brian, what if you're weightless?
Yep. If you're weightless, but that's not, but let's take his thing, what he just said. If you're weightless, that means these things are flying around. Wouldn't it be great if this had something sticky on it and you can stick it on, right? So for the things that are flying around in the space capsule, it'd be great to be able to lodge it in one place and stick it there. So different uses instead of just lifting our whole weight. Although in this example here, if you see Kaisa, she is the second daughter of the guy who had been studying the gecko, and she's gecko girl. The first daughter wanted to be the one, but they didn't invent the new polymer until she was weighed too much. This little girl weighs 52 pounds, and that was okay.
Does it matter? Well, first of all, it has to have a lot of hairs, right?
Yeah.
So, and these are, obviously hairs that were designed by an engineer. Now, does it matter what material it is?
Yeah.
Okay, so what kind of material do you use?
The material that they did use was a pretty soft, PDMS, some Silex. I don't know material so much, but it has many fine pillars. But you'd have to talk to the Stanford Kutkovsky person who made the sticky bot, but he's working with somebody else who's the polymer chemist. But it's there, and that's why I find the field of material science so exciting. There's so much happening in material science that's changing that combination is going to be really amazing. And that's how come that thing about the chitosan, the stuff in insect cuticle and the material that they made the packaging out of. This was an advanced material, and this is the cellophane, the new packaging that's going to be biodegradable, so you get rid of the waste up in space. Yeah. I can send that around, yeah. Okay, so how do we do this? So let's say, I'm going to give you 3 tools. This is very similar to Dr. Bielen's tools. You can do functional indexing. The reason why I focus on function is that we don't want to just copy structure. We would like to copy how it works. So think about similar functions. And so say like waste management. No, I'm not going to say waste management. I don't even know what but let's just say sticking, because I have this right here. What are the many different ways that you can that are synonyms for sticking? So you can say fasten, attach, adhere, stick. Okay? But first you think about sticking, right? But fasten is a really nice application because you fasten, that's how come Velcro works. You fasten your shoelace, you don't have to tie shoelaces anymore. Okay? Or you can invert the function. And the reason why I'm telling you this is these are your keywords so that when you do a search, like a Google Scholar search or a web search, or what do you use? Do you use Web of Science? What's your search engine? Anyway, whatever your search engine is. I mean, you've got so much knowledge right there on your iPhone. Just use it. But you got to have the right keywords to find the right things. Or you can do the last one, like, do a champion adapter. What you do is you try to think of, like, the most extreme environment, and you still imagine something sticking. And so, you know how your Band-Aid always falls off you when you're wet or swimming? Okay, so then you want to say, okay, what sticks underwater? So then you say, okay, the octopus does it, the mussel, the little clamp bivalve does it. So you look to extreme environments to figure out how they do it. Or if you're considering how to conserve water, go to the desert or go to the tropical rainforest and find organisms that deal with water and see if we could learn something from them on how to conserve water. Yeah.
That's a great idea, but I was wondering, a lot of times what evolution does is cross-functional, multifunctional, more systems-based approach.
They do what?
What evolution does, or the technique it evolves, is more like multifunctional. It's more, there are a lot of moving parts involved. It's quite complicated.
Yes.
So how do you decouple? I guess my real question is, how do you make the connection between something that's complicated and a simple function that you're indexing?
Good. It's similar to problem decomposition. So you can have the same item doing many different things, like the bird's wing. It can fly, it can thermoregulate, it can attract mates, it can repel rain, okay? So once you divide it up into the different components, and then you say, okay, it flies when it needs to, get somewhere. It flashes it when it needs its mating, so it applies at a different time. And then you say, okay, which of these situations or environments matches the conditions of my design, of the design that you want to make? You see how that works? So you divide it up, subdivide. Divide and conquer, is that the term for problem decomposition? Okay. Okay, so once you have your problem decomposed here, and then you have your biological system do a similar decomposition, then you try to match just what I explained to Deepak just now. So you try to make sure that the environment is similar, the performance requirements are similar, then you have better matches. A lot of times you can do things that nature can't do, which is to combine two organisms into one. Okay, so for example, in this case, the adhesive was a wet adhesive. They wanted to make a new tissue glue. And so they took the way the gecko worked and the way the mussel worked, which was through this chemical that was similar to dopamine, and they were able to make a new adhesive that it was able to adhere to wet pieces of tissue. So this way you learn something from the gecko, which is a lizard, and then the bivalve, which is, something else, a mollusk. Okay. Another sort of interesting feature about bio-inspired design that's different than most problem solving is that often in standard problem solving, you're given to a problem. Your client comes to you and says, please make me another, a faster way to distribute mail or something like that, okay? What we found in our class is that there's a new way or a different way to address problems, is that you find some organism that has already solved the problem, like this self-cleaning. You figure it out and you say, where are there problems that I can use this solution for? So it's solution driven. And it's kind of pretty cool that you have now this option. Okay. So let's see, do I want to go through this? I'm just trying to think of, I have half an hour. What this, I'll give this chart in the notes, but it just tells you to be, you have to pick a specific function of an organism. You focus on a particular behavior, so don't get so caught up in all the complexities.
Hey, Jeanette, could you go through one example, maybe?
Yeah. Oh no, I will.
Okay.
Yeah. And so, anyway, you have. Anyway, you have solution-driven where you start off with the organism and you focus on a particular function, or you have a problem and you try to think of, those key words, the same function, inverted function, or the exemplar. Okay, good. Okay, so one of the things that one of the other tactics is to biologize your function. So, it's asking the question, what would nature do, right? WWND, okay? I cannot see the face of my cell phone, in the bright sunlight. Okay? What would nature do? So this is the question you'll ask. You'll say, gosh, our space astronauts have a problem with waste management. What would nature do? Then you say, well, bears have this cool way of dealing with waste. Or you say, what are other problems? Radiation. How am I going to protect myself from space radiation? So in your mind, you say, okay, what would nature do? That one's a hard one. That one I got puzzled with.
So did a few other people.
Okay. So what would nature do to protect themselves from radiation? Say that again?
I said the proverbial cockroach, right, can live through a nuclear meltdown, and so.
That's like in all those science fiction movies. That's all you find out there. Yeah.
I read that Arabidopsis was seen to be resistant to radiation around the Chernobyl kind of area. They'd evolved to do something. I don't know what.
Yeah, let's take a look at what Arabidopsis does. I didn't know that. Yeah. Because it's an interest. I don't know that tactic. Anybody else?
Certain trees were better at it as well. Birch trees or something, I suppose.
Yeah.
I was thinking more like if there's any kind of microorganisms in the upper atmosphere where there's no radiation.
See, they're thinking. So you take those, write those ideas down, because that's your assignment. Yeah, your assignment tonight or whenever. I'm not really sure what, but is to find an organism that does answer one of the problems. Figure out how that organism works by functional decomp, and just see if it matches, if there's anything in the problem decomposition where your organism's functions can actually solve it. Even if it's just one little component, not the whole thing. Or it could solve the whole thing. Yeah. Yes?
Obviously, the types of fish that don't want to be connected to water, there's other like shallow water fish in general.
Yes.
Otherwise, bears and other predators, I guess.
Yeah. So you're saying this is for radiation or for this one?
Sorry.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's camouflage or hiding or manipulating light, and which is exactly what nature does. It actually, how does nature display or manipulate light? So you have color that is interacting, but you have to be interacting at the scale that color works. What scale is that? What's the scale of color and light? It's nanometers. So you're working at the nanometer scale, so you have to make sure that your system is capable of working at the nanometer scale if you want to mess around with light. So you can ask other questions in addition to being not to be seen by the bear, or to be seen when you want to display to another one, or to gather light. But when you work with light, like this Morpho butterfly, it can be seen from a quarter of a mile away. And it's not generating light. It is taking the ambient light and shining it back at you. It's taking free energy and shining it back at you. It is not battery powered. And how does it get seen a quarter mile away? And it's because it's got this very unusual structure. Okay, so you can see this. These are the scales on a butterfly wing. Okay, and it's made of protein. So it's not even mirrors and metal. It's made out of proteins. How does it manipulate light? Turns out that it has 2 layers and it works like a thin film interference. And it reflects part of the light wave, and some of it penetrates and reflects out and combines, and then you see that blue color. So you take this and you say, oh, wow, that is so cool. How could I use it in my invention? Turns out somebody did use it for their computer display or cell phone display, Qualcomm. And they were able to manipulate it at the nanometer scale so that the pixels were taking the ambient light and reflecting it back at you. So if you're in bright sunlight, it's going to reflect back more. Okay? So, where do we go? So you want to be the one to get the 200 patents, so you have to iterate, right? You go back and forth between problem-driven and solution-driven. So you have your problem, you solve it, and you find a really cool organism that solves it, and then you go back and forth until you become famous or rich or whatever you want to be. Solve the world's problem. That's what you want to be, or figure out a way to go into space and be able to survive for a long time with as rich a life as you do have here on Earth. And so by going back to the butterfly, so I just showed you that they used it for display technology, they went back to the butterfly and said, wow, that thin film interference, you could change that color by infiltrating the gap, because it's an air gap, with a gas. And if you infiltrate it with a gas, it will reflect a different color. So it turns out you could use this tactic as a chemical sensor. So I think that was pretty smart of this group. Okay, so again, Charlie says, it's the real voyage of discovery consists of not seeking new landscapes, but in having new eyes. So you look at things in a different way. Okay, so we've got these various ingredients. We've got evolution as a source of, a rich source of design solutions. We've got the design process that we've learned different ways to go forward. You have to be passionate about it. Some unique aspects of bio-inspired design. You need a deep understanding of biology, or alternatively, make a friend with a biologist. This is what I've decided that next time that I teach this on a different class, I say, before you come to my class, make a friend with a biologist, so that when you have the assignment, you can say, do you know of something or other that does this? Waste management or conserves water. Okay? Okay, so you need to learn this analogical link, how to decompose your functions, and combine skills. And you know about your design journal. You have to make a concept map so you understand where you're going, reflect on what you learned, and then be radical. Okay? Don't be afraid to go crazy, fail, go way out, because then you can pull back in and you can say, let's see, which one of these will work, which one will give me more ideas during this concept generation time of the design process. Okay, so this is our problem, right? I don't know how much, I'm taking this from previous slides. You've got yourself out in space and you're polluting your environment, right? Because you're eating and you're processing. What can we do to make life there capable so that you can live up there? And then you did this. This this is an intense decomposition. Did you explain how you did this? Okay, how did he do it? Can you do it? Or do you have to be as good as him?
This is using object process methodology, and it's a verbal and graphical representation of both function and form in the same domain and the interaction. And so there are verbal rules, so you could basically convert a problem statement into a diagram and follow the rules to zoom in as you have the problem statement, zoom in and decompose each level as you step in. And so when I presented it, I started out the problem statement and zoomed in each level and broke it down. The tree grew, basically.
So I think we could apply the same approach to do a functional decomposition of your organism. Okay?
Yeah.
So let's just say we've got this model of we've got the problem decomposed here, and there were various solutions for some of the things, like this one was the radiation protection, I think, right? A magnetic shield so these are now the existing solutions. So when you make a new invention, you want to make sure it actually works better than the existing solution. So you got to know about the existing solution. So I was looking through them, and this one was the one about making regenerative life support, which we will hear about more from tomorrow from Ray Wheeler. But he's like growing potatoes here on a biofilm, and these are soybeans here, and these are tomatoes. I said, wow, this is great. Okay? But then you got to also make sure that you yourself are happy out in space, together with the same people over and over again, and no place to hide, that kind of stuff. Like here, like you're stuck here, okay? So I took a look at this, and I said, okay, what can I look at here? What can I deal with? Oops. Okay, wait a minute. Anyway, I think you know about problem decomposition, so I don't think I need to go through that. So I'm just going to go through it quickly. Do I need to do this? Because I think he's done it, and I think what I do here, this example is, so you have a plant that's growing, okay? There's different ways, different things that it does to maximize the research that are required for plants to grow. You can increase CO2, you can increase energy for photosynthesis, increase water, increase nutrients. So that was that whole thing of multifunctionality, okay? Let's pick one function. This is the one, increase energy for photosynthesis. You can solve it, the organism solves it in 3 different ways. Why does it want 3 different ways? It's because they want redundancy. If the cloud goes over the cover, you want to have another way to be able to collect sun. Okay, so you increase conversion efficiency. Okay, so you can increase the light intensity, you decrease occlusion, so you don't want to be in the shade. And how do you do that? Oh, you maintain a clean surface. And how do you do that? So each time you go down on this axis, you say, how do you do that? How do you do that? Each time you go up, you say, oh, why does it have this clean surface? Oh, I see. It's to get the shade away, to decrease occlusion. So it's how going down, why going up. So how does it do it? Okay, clean surface. Okay, wash the surface. Oh, it has all these really cool structures on it. Okay, so now what? Okay, so I've got the biological system decomposed. Okay, I got my problem. Okay, I have a solar energy, a solar photovoltaic. Okay, it has the same problem. I want to increase the amount of energy, that sunlight exposure that the plant has. It has the same thing about increasing light intensity. It doesn't want to get dirty, so it doesn't want to decrease occlusion. It wants to maintain a clean surface. I always have to wash that surface. Hey, why don't we use the same tactic that the plant does and put little bumps on it so it self-cleans? Okay, that's what I mean by when you match, and this is your homework. You're going to take your problem decomposition and you're going to take your functional decomposition and see at what point does it match. And then will I be able to get them to show it to me tomorrow?
Absolutely. They're going to work all night.
They're going to work all night. No, I have all the papers for you. So you don't have to do that search. All you have to do is read the papers. Oh, they're so cool papers. It's papers on why the bones of bears don't get soft when they're sitting around doing nothing. I think it would be cool to know that. Don't you? Yeah. Okay, so you know this, you know this. Okay, here's our class homework, okay? You are going to fill out, you're going in your teams, okay? So each of your teams, you have to write these words down: functional, indexing, inverted, and champion. I've decided that we could probably tackle water conservation, waste management, muscle stuff, and bone degradation, maybe this radiation thing, and then this one. But with 20 minutes left, I might not be able to get through all of these, but I have solutions for all of those.
All right, hey, Bob, did you hear that, Bob? Yep. Okay.
What? Which one? What's?
That's Bob Bagdigian. He's our ECLIS. Bob Bagdigian is our ECLIS guru at Marshall Space Flight Center. So
great. Oh, I hope
so. All you have to do, Bob, is give grants to Georgia Tech, right?
No. Give grants to these teams. This is what. No, these teams will figure it out. You give grants to those people, not. Yeah.
Well, they could give them to Georgia Tech. We get graduate students, and we could then give them to the high school teacher coaches.
That's right. That's right. So I want each of the teams to pick one of these, because I have articles. Okay. Normally, I teach this class. It's 15 weeks. Okay. So you have time to search the literature to find the best articles. But I've already picked out articles on metabolism, on group living, on water conservation, and radiation. So there are 4 teams. You can take one of each, and then I'll give you your papers. Anyway.
So how about we spend 5 minutes?
Yeah.
This is a good thing to.
Yeah. And then you spend 5 minutes
the
talking to each other and fill this out.
Shaka, get the team going.
Okay, sign up for radiation, Deepak. Yep. Okay, good. So one is on bones. One's on, what did you say you want? Radiation, Deepak?
Yeah, I'm doing radiation.
Okay. And bones. Bones, check. Then there was one on group living. And one was on waste. You got that? You're going to do that one? Or is that going to be... Radiation, waste, group living, what? Oh, water. Well, waste and water, I think are... I actually...
No, it's just this exercise.
Okay. Yep. So just spend a few minutes just finding similar functions, inverted functions, and then the key organisms. You'll do what? Which ones are left? I don't think anybody's taken group living. Or did you take waste management? You took bones, right? Let's see.
What's the inverted thing?
Prevent bone degeneration. That's the function.
Oh, is that
Yeah, use active verbs for so strength, right? Strength. How are bones maintained? There's stress on the bones to keep it growing, right? So think about what makes bones strong. How's that? Got it.
How about radiation?
Yeah, radiation. It's a tough one. But I have a funny animal, the desert snail. I like you with long hair. You should grow it. Yeah, it's good. But my husband also is like this. Not much hair up here and ponytail. He has a pony.
I got lazy and like
Now you have three. We have muscle atrophy.
Yes.
Cardiovascular. Do you just want us to do the bone degeneration?
Yeah, just do bone.
Just do the bone.
Yeah, because somebody else wants to do muscle.
Oh,
stuff.
okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, if I want to give them the papers, how do I give it to them? They're in e-files. Or just load it up on something, right? Yeah. Okay. Well, I made it through 100 slides in time. Oh, no, I have a whole bunch more. I forgot I had some really good ones.
Jeanette, this is great that you're using this.
That I'm using this?
Yeah, that you're using this to...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I studied your paper.
Wow.
I said, holy cow.
I didn't think people would read my stuff.
No, I didn't know what, I had to figure out what functions to choose.
Actually, we should connect you also with Dov Dory. Dov is the inventor of OPM.
Oh,
his work
okay. I would like to practice this. Because I want to use it on the functional decomp of the animals.
Yeah. Well, recently he started to think about biological systems.
Ooh.
He has a paper out on applying OPM to the immune system.
To do the synthetic pathways? Yes.
Pathways.
Okay.
There's a lot of pathways.
Yes. That's on like systems biology.
Yes.
And that's such a hot topic now.
Very,
Oops.
very complex topic.
Yeah.
I think it's applicable to basically, how you talk about observing nature and then understanding the principles at play.
Yeah.
And trying to apply this or inspire or transfer it to some other problem.
Yeah.
So I think OPM could be very helpful in codifying that knowledge.
Yeah.
In a crisp way.
So I have to study that.
Think of it as a design language.
Yeah, I like that. But it's to decompose the problem logically and yeah.
And to decompose processes and inputs, outputs, supporting systems, attributes, everything in one view.
Yeah.
Because a lot of these, there's
that's the color coding.
A group at Georgia Tech that's very active in, it's called SysML, System Modeling Language. And it's not bad, but it's a little difficult because at some point the views of the system split. Like you have a structural view.
Then it becomes
you have a
3D and 4D.
Yeah, it's actually like, in SysML you have 14 different views of the system.
Yeah,
wow.
right. It's that your multi-dimensional space.
The problem is if you change something over here, it doesn't really automatically propagate to all the other views.
So that interacting
so you get
systems.
Views of the system. It's just,
interesting. So they have challenges that they still have to deal with, but still the beginning part sounds pretty good. Okay, yeah, I'd like to try it just on doing a functional decomp of natural systems and see how it works.
Yes, so I was thinking
that's his PhD.
Yeah.
He's working on that first PhD.
Yeah, why don't you do it for biological systems?
Now that you mention it, because I was thinking of doing sort of a post-mortem on the personal airbag idea.
Yeah.
Sort of how you had the original problem statement, how you brought in and compared the functions of biological systems and morphed it into this personal bubbles idea, and then how that idea evolved into the hardware and implementation. Because one of the things you can, if you do a low enough decomposition of this, you can start to extract the fundamental physics of the problem.
Yeah.
Like you can capture patterns. Like, conservation of energy, for example.
Yeah.
And then because
you mean the decomposition gets a life of its own?
Right.
No way. That's too weird.
And because we have all the data for the personal airbag system now, we could go back and do this for that. And I even have the mathematical models and all of that, which you could represent in this language as well. So there's this morphing of it as it progresses from idea to ideation to concept to mathematical implementation to building hardware and how these pieces fit together.
Okay.
Wow.
So you've got lots, that you're going to try to tackle during your thesis. This is stuff that you're going to work on during your thesis as part of it?
Well, I was thinking that was a case study of
the
overall approach.
Yeah, cool. That's really cool. Well, I'll study it more to see if I can use it for them.
I've got a cheat sheet in that paper. It's
good.
Page. I don't know if you saw it.
Yeah, I have that. Yeah. I mean, I have your paper printed out because I wanted to figure out where to get me some levers. Okay, so because we have only about 10 more minutes left.
Okay, we could have your attention again.
I'll give you some hints, although I probably shouldn't. Do you want hints? You want some hints? Okay, so here's some ideas. Here's some ideas that you could develop. So what I've learned from working with senior capstone design groups, these are groups, all you engineers do this as a senior, that I can only work with for a very short time. They're not taking my full 15-week course. They have a problem that they need to deal with, and they're engineers. And so I usually give them the most likely biological system that works, and then you just see if it works. I don't know if it works, but I just give them the best. So anyway, here's some best ideas, or likely exemplars. So to conserve water, we could look at salt glands of those birds that drink salt water, or turbinates. Oh, desert spider. Oh, I don't have that example. Exercise muscles, mako shark, retain bone strength in hibernating bears, managing waste in hibernating bears, and then this protect from radiation. I include that butterfly because what I learned from the butterfly is if you want to protect or use radiation, you have to operate at the wavelength of whatever it is that's coming at you. So that's my only tactic. Yes?
I understood most of them, but I didn't get the mako shark.
Good. Okay. I'll show you it. An idea. Yeah, I'm going to go in detail on some of these. Not each of these. Yes? Turbinates are what I'm going to show you right now. Okay. Oh, okay. Group living, I was thinking about noise reduction or animal communication or stabilizing the system. How does networking help? So we know that we've got, what is it, tweeting or whatever it is. So there's stabilizing of the system. You can warn people what's going on through that system. Okay. So remember that you do this. You populate this table, and for water, here's my population of that table. So you can water purification, filtration, collection, storage, transport, champion adapters, a whole bunch of stuff that I know about, and then inverted, overuse of that. Okay, so this is just an example of how you can populate that and use these words as keywords for when you do your search, go through your search engines, whichever ones you want to do. So I did this one for Wikipedia. So you can go to the salt gland And then I looked through all of this and I thought, oh, well, I don't know what I'm going to use. But I found I kind of like this one. So I went to the avian osmoregulation because I knew about the bird that kind of sneezes out salt. And I wanted to figure out, how does it...
It's good if you know that.
It's good if you know that. So there's a bird that's, yeah. So I wanted to know, how does that bird do that? So I looked through this and I said, well, look, it tells me all about kidneys, which I don't know if you've ever taught biology, beginning biology, but how kidneys work is the hardest thing to teach because there's countercurrent systems and gradients, but all of those things are the concepts that you do want to transfer. It's the importance of gradients, the importance of having them run opposite to each other, okay? And that's how these things work. But so I got to the point about the thing about it sneezing salt out of its nose, okay? But it's because there's a way that the membranes are semi-permeable to these solutes and the water, and they've got a pump system. But I just couldn't make the translation of that to our brine system on board the shuttle. I didn't know enough at that level of membrane structure. So I had to abandon that, okay? But then as I went down, I said, oh, wow, there's these turbinates, okay? So if you look at the nostril of a bird, did you know that it has all these little spirals in it? It has all these spirals in it to increase surface area. And this is to conserve, camels have it too in the desert environment. So when you breathe in, the cold air, dry air comes in and gets warmer, and because it's warmer, it can absorb more water. But when you breathe out, the surface area cools it, so then it releases the water, and the water is drier so that you don't lose so much water in breathing out. So when that person who was talking about the, breathing out, how much water comes out when you breathe out, you could have some way of recapturing that water if we learned from this bird. Okay, so that was one thing. Okay, so then I figured out how they did it. Turbinates. Okay, so the mako shark. So exercise muscles. So we know that when you get off the space shuttle, you look like this, right? You got to be carried. Your muscles are crummy, and your bones have looked like this, and your heart has decreased in size, and all this stuff. Bad. Well, anyway, I was thinking about how fish are sort of in a less gravity. So I said, how do they keep their muscles in good shape? What? Yeah, right. How do they? Turns out they have a really cool helical muscular system, kind of like those Chinese puppets that go around. And so each time that you move, it actually pulls on a different part of your body. So you're still stimulating your muscles and your bones, because that's how you keep your muscles and your bones in good shape. I see my time is up. Okay. So anyway, so I thought about, the spider suit and how could you build something. I talked to Charlie about this. And then he comes and tells me, oh, they've already figured that one out. There's a TheraSuit that they've developed first they developed it for people that